Hey everybody, this is Miko, and this video will be on the subject of asking questions in the context of a sales situation. For example, specifically in the car sales, in your any interaction that you have with a customer. So, first of all, why questions are important? Well, first of all, if it's not clear, people will tell you how you can sell them a car. If you ask enough questions and listen, they will tell you, they will give you either hints or clues, or just tell you up front what would it take to sell them a car. I had recently an experience at the vet clinic where they tried to sell me some insurance plan for my pet, my cat, and they asked me zero questions. They didn't ask me anything about my situation, whether I have insurance, don't have a health situation. The person just went straight into the presentation. I was polite, she was nice about it, but she talked for about 10 minutes, went through all the plans, and that was it. And I had zero interest, and she could have, if she asked questions, she maybe there was a chance that she could have tailored the plan specifically for my needs. Didn't happen, there were zero questions. Second reason why questions are important, you can use questions themselves to help you in your sales process. Questions help you direct and influence. I'll give you examples on how you can influence with questions, but also direct. So, for example, closed questions, which we'll talk about, they will guide you, your customer into a specific funnel that will move them towards the sale, so the process will go smoother and faster. Now, I will talk about the sedan again, but for those that like to just, shut down the video after a couple of minutes, one of the most important things with asking questions is to listen to answers. It's not just to ask a question, it's actually listen. And I mean it in the deepest sense, not what happens a lot of times in a conversation, especially in the selling situation. When customer is speaking, you're thinking about what you're going to say next, what you're going to ask, how you're going to counter their objection, and so on. Try to avoid that. Once you ask a question, be quiet and just give them 120, whatever percent you can of your attention, and listen to the end, then pause, and then see if maybe you can ask something else to move it along. So I'll talk about this a little bit more, but this is extremely important, which a lot of people forget. So on the topic of asking questions, a couple of things. A lot of times what prevents us as salespeople from asking questions is simply fear. Fear is that, maybe we'll be annoying, we'll be wasting time, that people will get upset from our questions. Don't be afraid, because first of all, this is your job. Okay, this is what you need to do. This is if somebody came to you, I'm not talking about cold calling, somebody came to the dealership, they need a car, asking questions will help them get a car sooner. Okay. Next is when you ask a question, people are programmed. All of us are programmed to answer them. It's just the program response. No matter what you ask a customer or any person, they're just programmed to answer. If you tell somebody what to do, it's there's a 50-50 chance that there might be a person that likes to be accommodated and obedient, that will do what you ask. But there's a good chance that there'll be a contrarian. And if I tell you what to do, if I tell you this car is the best, then I'm going to take it, I might take it the wrong way because of my personality. But if you ask me a question, I will answer that question. It's just programmed into us. There are games that can show you, I'm not going to get deep into it, but once we played a game with a trainer where the game was that two people have to answer each question with a question. And you'll be surprised how difficult it is just to stop yourself from answering the question and just ignore it and move on to something else. So again, don't be afraid. People will answer your questions. It's pretty easy. Now, we'll talk about a couple of different scenarios and specific types of questions, but questions also, like I said, they help you move the customer in the right direction. but they pretty much can hypnotize the person. When I ask you something, you have to think about that. And if I ask you a closed-ended question, which gives you 2 or 3 options to answer, it's a light hypnosis. It moves you along, and that's a great benefit of this. So what kind of questions, how can it work for you to move your process along? So just to start with, in a scenario, if you just met a customer and they asking questions, you're looking at some cars, maybe you're looking at their trade, just ask them, what kind of car you drive now? Open-ended questions. You start with open-ended questions. They tell you what kind of car. Oh, great, that's a nice car. How do you like it? How was your experience with the car? Did you have any issues? Now, from every question that I just told you now, there could be 100 answers, and on each of those answers, I can ask more. I can ask, wow, can you tell me more about that? That sounds like a great experience. What really happened? So those are the type of the questions that you can just really find out. And remember, those things will help you. I don't want to use the word, manipulative words like fish, but they will help you find clues on how to move things along. People will tell you what it will take to sell them a car. For example, if I ask, how did you decide to buy your previous car? They can tell you, well, it's because of safety, it's because of mileage, it's because of the brand that you always buy, but they'll give you those clues. As I talked about in the video about test driving, when customer is driving, this is your best opportunity at the right time. But when people are driving, you can ask them questions that, first of all, it's going to be even harder for them not to answer, first of all. And second, it'll be extremely difficult for them to lie. People can drive and talk, they can drive and listen, but it's hard for them to do more than 2 things at once. So driving, talking, and thinking what you're talking about, basically lying, that's extremely difficult, and most people just cannot do that. So at the right time on the test drive, when the customer is distracted, that's when you ask important questions. Also, another question that's one of my favorite is, and it's a question that you can ask always during a presentation, but especially on the test drive. That's a tag question. Tag questions are the best, aren't they? That was a tag question. You're test driving, that car feels nice, doesn't it? This looks great, doesn't it? This feels something. So something that ends with isn't it, doesn't it, hasn't it, anything like that. Basically, it's a question, and people feel it as it feels to them as a question they're going to answer. How they're going to answer? 99% of the time, it'll be yes, it does. So when you ask the right questions, you get the right responses, which is what you want. There are 2 other than tag questions, which are like a category in its own. There are 2 types of questions, if you had to divide it: open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Now, I don't want to make it too complicated, but just as the rule of thumb, at least for myself, you start your sale process with open-ended questions. This is where you need to get more information about the customer. So how was your experience? What do you like about your car? What brings you to this dealership and not the other one? What do you like about this brand and not the other one? Just you trying to get a story out of the customer that you can elaborate on. Closed-ended question is something like, do you like black color or white color? Do you prefer SUVs or sedans? So you can use this in the beginning of the process if you feel that the customer is reluctant to answer questions and just giving you very short answers. This will help you kind of guide them in the right direction. But especially at the end, it's important not to ask questions like, let's say you test drove, you decide on the model. A bad question that you can ask is, what kind of color, what's the color that you like? Well, what colors we have, because if they tell you I like green cars and that brand and model doesn't come with green, then you have a problem. So this is where you ask closed-ended questions. For example, inventory is short. It could always be short, especially once you already narrowed things down. You have 3 cars in stock, right? 3 different colors: silver, gray, and white. So I can just tell. It's not deceitful. I'm just going to tell the customer, okay, great, we decided on this model. We have in stock white, gray, and silver. Which color do you prefer? So, if I asked them what color they want in general, it could have been red. But if I word it in the right way and it's a closed-ended question, it's going to help me guide it towards that one end. Lease or purchase. Do you prefer 36-month loan or 48-month loan? Maximum 3 choices, 2 is the best. All right, so we talked about that. Now, there are some questions that, at least in my opinion, I never ask, and I recommend not to ask those questions because, again, like open-ended questions at the wrong time, some questions are not going to help you. They can lock you in the wrong situation. And especially it comes in when you get to numbers, if there's any negotiations involved, but even just without negotiation. So those are questions not to ask. What is your budget? How much down do you have? How much do you want for your trade? This is one of the worst questions that old school used car managers like to ask. You bring them a trade and they tell you, well, how much do they want for it? I don't want to know how much they want for it. I want to know what you will pay for this car and let me work on that because I'm going to tell the customer, okay, your car is worth $10,000. I don't want to know, I don't want them to tell me that they think it's worth 20 because now if once they said that number, now it's between us. Now it's up there. Now it exists. Now we have to deal with that. And if they said 20 and I said 10, it's really hard to come together because even though they might know they're being ridiculous, it's just much harder for them to count down. They kind of get locked in those numbers. How much do you want to pay? How much do you want to pay per month? That's another question. Well, I want to pay nothing, or I want to pay $200 for a $60,000 SUV. How's it going to help? Again, it's going to lock in the customer in the wrong position. So again, there are questions. Think about those questions you don't want to ask. And in certain situations, once you demoed, locked in on the car, well, maybe not even locked in, but when you're ready in the demo stage or maybe after, you can ask closing questions. Closing questions, they're just probing questions. How long have you been considering this car? How long have you been shopping for this car? If you were to go ahead with this purchase, would you prefer 36 months or 48 months? So this is not a closing question, it's a test closing question. Because first of all, the customer will tell you, well, I'm not buying this car, or I'm not buying it this month. So now you know what you're dealing with. But if there was a chance, they will tell you, well, and this will, again, with closed-ended questions, you're going to kind of narrow and guide the process where you want it to go. Now, your customer always also going to ask questions. That's why they come to you. You're the professional, you're the advisor. Listen to their question. So some of their questions are closing questions. A lot of times, if I did a good job and the customer likes the car on the test drive, on the back half of the test drive, the customer is going to start asking, does this car come in this color? What's the best price you think it can get? Would you take my car in trade? Do you take credit card for a down payment? Those are all closing questions. So they come from the customer, but it's important, of course, you want to answer, but also this should tell you where you are, and it's really helpful. You just have to pay attention to those questions. And overall, when customer asks questions, you have to answer their questions. Okay, you have to answer it professionally, in detail if you have to, or maybe just concisely, doesn't really matter. But there's this law of reciprocity. Once the customer asks a question and you answer, you have the right to ask a question back. It's like a game of tennis. Okay, the ball comes to your side, you hit it back. Now it's their turn to hit it on your half of the court. So remember, don't just, once the customer asks a question, you answer, don't just keep quiet. This is your chance to ask something important because they will feel like they have to answer. All right, so let's talk about the situation and how it changes whether it's good to ask questions or not. So in person, this is why, even though we're in digital retail age and everything could be done online when we do internet sales and all of that, Questions work in person. This is why you do want to meet with the customer in person. If you cannot meet with them in person, try to get them on the phone. This is not the phone is not the subject here, but this is why you're going to attempt to get them on the phone. And these days, a lot of times, most of the time, you're not going to get them on the phone. But that's just like a game of chances, just like baseball. You're going to try to swing it and hit a home run every time, and you're going to fail most of the time. But once you get the customer on the phone, this is your chance. Ask them questions. Now, remember, we talked about how customers driving and they cannot lie. If you happen to catch your customer answering the phone and they're driving, this is your chance to ask more open-ended questions that normally maybe you would not have asked. So it's a different situation whether I'm picking up your phone call and I'm sitting in front of a computer. So now I'm asking you questions about numbers and details and specs, and just understand that I'm looking at the computer and we kind of browsing together, and this is how I have to give you a lot of information. If I'm driving, understand that giving me numbers is not going to do anything because I'm not going to remember. I don't have any frame of reference. This is a good chance to quickly answer a customer question and ask them something. Okay. Now, when it's written, when it's texting, email, whatever, chat, it's a whole different situation. You still can try to ask questions, but don't expect, obviously nobody's going to type out the story about what happened to them. Some people might, but most people won't. So when it's written, you try to get just to move to the next action. Try to have some kind of call to action. Can we get on the phone to discuss it further? Are you ready to schedule a test drive? Would you like to do a FaceTime video so I can show you the car? And then you have the chance to ask more questions. And I'm going to elaborate just a little bit more for the finale about listening to what people say. So another good big reason why questions are important: when you let people speak and you listen to them and you show that you listen with follow-up questions and they can see that you understand them, they like you more. And people buy cars or buy anything from people they like. Another advantage is that once you, as a salesperson, learn about the customer more, learn more about their life and the situation, you're going to like them more. And people feel that. People feel, that social relation, you cannot replace it with emails. As long as we're going to try to do digital retail, there's nothing like an actual social interaction. There's something primitive, primal in it, where you really listen to the customer, you show them empathy, you show them that you understand what's going on. It can just do wonders. And that's why meeting in person is important, and why it's important to ask questions, to listen. And I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.